Everyone, it's Ian here again. Last week's video about the Ontario DJI ban got a lot of you fired up. There's 174 comments in 5 days, which is pretty phenomenal. And some of you made some really sharp points that I really wanted to kind of come back to today. Because also something significant dropped this week and it speaks directly to what a lot of you are asking. So quick recap for anyone who missed it. Ontario announced on May 20th that it's banning Chinese-made drones from provincial government use. The OPP, provincial ministries, are phasing them out and replacing them with Canadian or approved alternatives. There's no specific technical vulnerability that was named, and the justification was essentially that Chinese law could theoretically compel DJI to hand over data, so we're not taking the chance. All right, let's talk about that. Like I said, a lot of you pushed back on that framing, and you weren't really wrong to. For example, Barry Duff 9839 pointed out, think about Google Maps, Google Street View, Apple Maps, Facebook, Alexa, you name it. There's so many ways to collect intelligence data, and that's a fair point. The data collection conversation doesn't start and end with just DJI. Mark Pylon went even further and noted that US intelligence agencies can also compel American companies to hand over data through national security letters without judicial review. Edward Snowden, maybe? So the idea that Western made it automatically means safe is kind of worth questioning. And David L. Pittman, who's been watching this play out in the US for years, had a pretty blunt message. It was started by lobbyists. There will never be proof of actual national security risk. Welcome to our hell. And he's basically specifically calling out Skydio, which we've talked about in the past a little bit. They're an American company, and they are also registered lobbyists in Canada, and that is verified. Skydio has been engaging Rubicon Strategy, a public affairs firm, since about February 2026, and it's on the registry of lobbyists. So these threads are the backdrop for basically what I want to talk about today. And so this week, a US cybersecurity firm called OnDefend released the results of a 5-month independent security assessment of DJI's drone systems. And the headline finding, no hidden backdoors. There was no data being transmitted outside of the United States without operator knowledge. There was no viable way to hack, hijack, or weaponize the drones. And essentially zero critical, high, or medium risk findings across the entire engagement. Now, I'm going to get ahead of it right now and say, because I know the comment's coming, but DJI did commission this. They did pay for the report, and that's been confirmed. So should we just throw this out and dismiss it? I don't think that's the right call, but what I do think we should look carefully at is how it was run. So OnDefend is a legitimate US firm. Their staff includes former military and government security professionals. They work with a national security clients. And this isn't just like a regular PR agency and here's the key part. They purchased the consumer drone, the Air, directly from a retail store without even telling DJI. And the enterprise unit came from existing dealer stock. It was off-the-shelf products, not specifically prepared samples shipped over by DJI's marketing team. And the methodology was specifically designed to prevent DJI from gaming the results. So is it a perfect study? No study ever really is. But here's the thing. The anti-DJI case has been driving policy in multiple countries for years now, and it has never been grounded in documented technical evidence. Not once has a government published a specific vulnerability finding. Prove me wrong, I'd love to be. Now, there's documented technical evidence on the table, and it points the other way. And our old buddy Jasper Ellens, who's been helping us with leaks for years, inadvertently put it well in the comments last week. I think it's better to get them in the act. You want to see proof first, then drag them to court. And that's exactly what this audit's trying to do. Look for the proof, and they didn't find it. There was no smoking gun. So what did they actually test? Well, everything that's been alleged. They did 5 months of this on 2 different platforms, the Air 3S for consumers, the Matrice 4E for enterprise. Software, firmware, hardware teardowns, RF spectrum scanning, network traffic monitoring, and even supply chain verification. They tried to replace signals, jam the comms, inject malicious data, jailbreak the apps. They even physically took both drones apart and cataloged every component looking for unauthorized hardware or supply chain tampering. Nothing. And one specific finding I want to highlight because it came up directly in the congressional testimony in the US, the allegation that DJI drones might store flight data while offline and then later upload it back once they're connected to the internet. OnDefend specifically tested for that, and they found no evidence of it. So that accusation, not a proven fact, an accusation, has shaped policy decisions on both sides of the border, both in the States and now here in Canada. Now there's a test that looked for it and came up empty. They did find some minor things, and there were 10 low-risk findings, 13 observations, which were mostly software hardening and wireless configuration notes. For example, one issue, a shared Wi-Fi password, was actually patched during the engagement. And that's how a responsible security process is supposed to work, right? None of these issues, according to the report, represented a realistic threat to flight safety or widespread exposure of sensitive data. It's not as bad as it sounds. So now, a couple of you last week also raised a question about 200 or sub 250 gram drones. At PIRANGLES asked specifically about that. The audit covered the Air 3S and the Matrice 4E, which are both over 250 gram drones. It didn't cover every DJI product, so there is a scope limitation here that we're talking about. This is only really 2 samples. It's not the entire range of products. And another user whose name is just chaos made a point that deserves a direct response. Of course, there's no breach. China isn't transparent. Well, that's a structural argument. Ontario made that too, and it's not nothing. We're not diminishing the concern. A hardware audit can confirm that no data is leaving the drone today. The legal question about what Beijing could theoretically demand from a Chinese company tomorrow is a completely separate conversation. That concern doesn't disappear because a hardware test came back clean. But there's a difference between a theoretical legal risk and an active technical vulnerability. Ontario and Washington before it has been treating these as the same thing. This audit is specifically addressing the technical side, and on that side, the evidence doesn't support the claims that have been made. Practically speaking, if you're flying DJI for commercial work, nothing about your day-to-day operation has changed. But if you're flying anything sensitive, including inspection, public safety, or near restricted infrastructure, this is a good reminder to consider using local data mode. So on consumer drones, it's in the DJI Fly app. You go to settings, then notification and privacy, and toggle local data mode on. For full isolation, you can also turn off Wi-Fi on your phone or the controller, and OnDefend has specifically flagged that as a controller OS can still connect to Wi-Fi if it's left on. On enterprise drones, it's all DJI Pilot 2, and then you go into settings, then data and privacy again, and choose your network security mode. Full local data mode cuts the app from the internet entirely, and enterprise operators also have the media data encryption option and offline firmware updates via SD card. So you can just load your firmware into a card and upload it directly without the thing ever connecting to the internet, period. Mr. Furball had a comment that stuck with me. Canadian-made drones just means drones assembled in Canada with Chinese parts running Chinese software. And that's kind of the real tension in this conversation. The reality of the supply chain is that it doesn't respect national borders. And Ontario is going to find that out when they go looking for replacements. Look, I'm not really here to tell you that DJI is above scrutiny. No company is. And I'm not dismissing the geopolitical risk here. That's real and it's complicated. What I'm saying is, if we're going to make decisions about public safety operations, wildfire response, search and rescue, and how they get affected, these decisions that affect your livelihood and mine, these decisions should be based on evidence and hard facts, not assumptions, not lobbying, real evidence. And we have some. Now, the full executive summary is going to be available through DJI's Trust Center. And I'm going to put the Drone Service Provider Alliance article in the description, which was surfaced by Vic Moss on Facebook this week. So thanks for your help on that, Vic. And it's a great breakdown of exactly what was tested and what was found. So drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.